Welcome back. You're watching Gravitas. Now, we take a look at India's relations with another neighbor, Pakistan. Incidentally, China considers Pakistan as an all-weather ally. Tonight, we focus on India-Pakistan relations in all its facets, including, but not limited to, the issue of the sharing of the waters of the Indus River. Now, India has agreed to take part in a meeting of the Permanent Indus Commission at Lahore in Pakistan. Now, although the meeting itself is routine and held annually as mandated by the Indus Waters Treaty of 1960, the fact that it is taking place after India threatened to cut all ties with Pakistan, including possibly revisiting the Indus Waters Treaty after the attack at Uri in Jammu, Kashmir in September last year, is indeed noteworthy. Now, it's given rise to speculation whether it indicates a thaw in the bilateral relations. So the question that some people are asking is India resuming talks with Pakistan? Now, for its part, the External Affairs Ministry is refusing to comment on the decision to attend the Permanent Indus Commission meeting in Lahore this month. Let me dwell a little bit on the background to the proposed talks. Now, India had suspended all bilateral talks with Pakistan last September. Now, this followed, as I said, the terrorist attack on an Indian army camp at Uri in Jammu and Kashmir. India said talks could not proceed without an end to terror strikes. Matters worsened in November when the World Bank set up a court of arbitration at Pakistan's request. The arbitration was over Pakistan's objections to India's Kishan Ganga and Ratle hydropower projects in Jammu and Kashmir. It was resolved only after the World Bank chief, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley of India, and his Pakistani counterpart Ishaq Dar had a three-way conversation. Now, since then, it seems that the World Bank has been quietly playing the role of mediator. A senior official, Executive Director Ian Solomon, was involved, who was followed by Chief Executive Officer Kristina Georgieva. Senior Indian officials were quoted as saying that there was no change in India's position and that the meeting of the Indus Waters Commission is a regular event. Now, the question is whether India is using this quote-unquote regular event to open the door to dialogue. Here, I want to talk a bit about the situation inside Pakistan as well. There's a new army chief in charge in Pakistan. There's been a noticeable reduction in firing and shelling by Pakistan across the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir. Also, terror incidents have lessened this year, but Indian soldiers continue to die in random terror strikes. All right, for the discussion about India-Pakistan relations, I am now joined by Ambassador Shashank, a former Foreign Secretary. And I'm also joined via Skype from Lahore in Pakistan by Rafe Alam, an environmental lawyer, and my senior colleague Surya Gangadharan in the studio as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining the Gravitas discussion on tonight. Also, WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Taha Siddiqui. Ambassador Shashank, coming to you now, is this yet another U-turn by India? Would you say it's a U-turn on the part of the Indian establishment?
Well, if the meeting had not been agreed upon, that would have meant further hardening of the Indian position.
Okay.
So what I would say is that really it's a holding operation. India keeps its options open. And while this meeting would take place, it does not mean that the debate which is going on within India, how to utilize the Indus waters much more effectively within India, and to tell Pakistan that blood and water cannot flow together.
Indeed.
And these terrorist attacks must stop. Finally, we also have to see that 1960 treaty was signed at a time when India-Pakistan was considered as twin brothers. If anybody were to say that today, they would be far from any kind of reality. Pakistan has become the hardcore center for all kinds of terrorism spread all over the world. And secondly, they are trying to take over where North Korea left.
Right.
So they want to become the main production center for the Chinese companies, while North Korea is trying to get out of the Chinese control.
All right. Before I go across to Rafe Alam in Lahore, I want to quickly go across to my colleague Taha Siddiqui. Taha, good evening. How has the Pakistani media taken to the reports in the Indian media that India has agreed to for talks on the Indus waters in Lahore sometime later this month?
Well, here the news has been being reported as from the Indian side. There seems to be a bit of silence from the Pakistani Foreign Office with regards to this. in a way that it appears that they're downplaying it and they're not really really investing in it right now and not commenting on this news. So most of the coverage that we've seen in Pakistan has been focused on what the Indian media has been saying, and also, as you mentioned, the fact that this basically is a routine meeting that happened last time. It happened in 2015, and officials from both sides do participate usually. So as of yet, we're not seeing any sort of commentary coming out of this from Pakistan.
All right, if I can bring in Rafe Alam into the debate now. If I were to ask you, the Indus Waters Treaty has stood the test of time. Now, why is Pakistan worried?
Pakistan shouldn't be worried, as a matter of fact. Can I just put this dispute into some context?
Yes,
in
please,
the last
absolutely.
year? Because we're dealing with two dams and a dispute, I feel, that's about the interpretation of the treaty. We have the Rakhle and Kishanganga Dam, with Pakistan saying that the differences between the two countries should be adjudicated by a court of arbitration, and India, on the other hand, saying that a neutral expert should be appointed. Now, I want to take some steps back to last year in July, when secretary-level talks between India and Pakistan on the two dams failed, and subsequent to that, in August, Pakistan formally requested the World Bank to set up a dispute resolution mechanism, a court of arbitration under the Indus Waters Treaty.
Right.
Now, the attack took place on the 18th of September, and as you said, towards the end of September, about the 26th, 27th, Prime Minister Modi made his statement about blood and water. But at exactly the same time, on the 26th and 27th of September, a Pakistani delegation led by the Attorney General was speaking at the World Bank with World Bank delegates about the Court of Arbitration. Now, subsequent to that, in October, Prime Minister Modi's entreaties to label Pakistan a terrorist state failed at the BRICS conference. And subsequent to that, and it was only subsequent to that in November, that the Indian Ministry of External Affairs said that the Pakistanis were misinterpreting the treaty and that a neutral expert should be appointed. Now, we have to understand that the dispute between the two countries is about the forum upon which this is going to be adjudicated.
Right.
But it seems the Uri attack has been a means by which political rhetoric has been ratcheted up on what is otherwise, as you said, a very successful treaty that has withstood the test of time.
All right, I want to bring in Ambassador Shashank now. Ambassador Shashank, some in India said that the treaty itself is skewed and it might favor Pakistan more than India. Now, some in the Indian government said last year that after the Uri attack especially, that India should revisit the treaty, as it were, and make more use of the waters of the Indus for its own purposes, for irrigation or hydropower. What do you have to say about that, Ambassador Shashank?
No, it's absolutely right. As I said in the beginning, when the treaty was signed, it was felt that this treaty would help resolve all issues for all time to come between the two countries, and they would live like happy twins. It never happened. They have moved further away from each other, and India at that time was a very poor country. It is still a poor country, but it can definitely spend some money on utilizing waters which are even within this treaty under the Indian control. But India has not been using that. Pakistan also, on the other side, they have built some dams, but they are more on strategic grounds rather than on real grounds of people's needs. And so people are protesting against the Pakistani government decisions. So the point is that the two governments have to really look into the implementation of the treaty on their own sides, and later on they can decide as to how do they want to improve relations between the two countries. If they feel that the relations can go to any level, become very, very bad, and the treaty would still survive, I'm afraid that is not the case. International law is very clear, international law on treaties, that any war, direct, indirect, declared, undeclared, leads to termination of all treaties.
But I want to quickly ask you, Ambassador Shashank, why is it that India always loses out when it comes to the negotiating table? I mean, we may have won wars in the past, but we always end up on the losing side at the table. Why is it so?
No.
Especially in the context of agreements, bilateral pacts, be it with Pakistan, any other country for that matter.
Mainly with Pakistan, because it is not just a question of two countries which are in that neighborhood, but they have some kind of common heritage. And their heritage goes back a long time. And there are many ways, many people in India who have any number of relatives in Pakistan.
But are you saying India was being magnanimous? Is that how you would see it?
Well, there is a kind of an opinion, and that is quite important. It has continued since 1947, even earlier.
Right.
But ever since 1947, every time there is a talk, they say that no, India has to be like an elder brother. We must make unilateral concessions to Pakistan, and we have been doing that. Now, the only point is that there was a hope, and that sometimes they expressed explicitly, and which went totally wrong on the Pakistani side. Like Jawaharlal Nehru at one stage said that we can think in terms of some kind of a confederation. And Pakistani said India wants to take over Pakistan. So this is what happens, you know. So historically, I'm just talking this as a historical reference point. We have to move to the future, and I hope that Pakistan would move towards a normal statehood rather than as what they are trying to do right now is totally a very civilizational kind of a heritage they want to achieve, which will be ruinous for Pakistan. They will become whatever is happening in the Daesh territories in Iraq and Syria would start happening in Pakistan also.
All right, fair point. Coming to you, Rafi Alam. Rafi Alam, you heard Ambassador Shashank say there, now water is a contentious issue in some parts of the world, and South Asia is no exception. Now, some in India wonder what has India got out of being generous with the terms and conditions of the Indus Waters Treaty, for instance. Now, India is a gracious neighbor, but what about Pakistan showing a little reciprocity, a little good neighborliness too? Why doesn't Pakistan, for instance, stop terrorism and come for talks?
That's a very good question. I want to answer that by saying that this entire issue about which forum, the Court of Arbitration or the neutral expert, the dispute between the two countries with respect to the treaty, has been embroiled with the Uri attack. Prime Minister Modi's rhetoric on the treaty only arose after the Uri attack. And I'll also remind Ambassador Shams that only last month, the NIA, the National Investigation Agency, had to release the two suspects that it had accused, the Indian government had accused of leading the Uri attack for lack of evidence. So as far as these assumptions are concerned that Pakistan is being an aggressive neighbor, I think we have to settle down and realize that we shouldn't let political rhetoric undermine what is a very effective water-sharing treaty.
All right, Taha, coming to you now. There was a lot of talk, commentary in India and Pakistan about a comprehensive bilateral dialogue, or CBD, in the context of India and Pakistan. Now, if I were to ask you, what's the fate of CBD today? Is it comatose? Is it stillborn? And do you see any hope at all of the dialogue resuming anytime soon?
Well, from what it looks like and what we've seen last year, there were lots of tensions, and we reported them, given the fact that there were these skirmishes on the border, cross-border firing happening. But that was under the previous army chief, and as you also in your introduction mentioned, the fact that there's a new army chief here in Pakistan now, and things are looking different. When he took office, one of the first things he said was that the situation on the borders will calm down, and to something to the effect of that. And then we've seen that after that, the Pakistani side has tried to reach out. But again, the deadlock comes from the fact that Pakistan wants to have a comprehensive dialogue, is what we get to hear from the Foreign Office here. On the Indian side, they insist on terrorism talks. All this is also related to what is happening with Hafiz Saeed recently. We saw him being house arrested. One of the things that India wants is the Mumbai trial to progress. So maybe in that regard also some developments have happened. So overall, this year looks like Pakistan and India are probably going to start moving towards maybe resuming these talks, unlike last year where we only saw tension.
Indeed, Surya, as Ambassador Shashank was pointing out a short while ago, Prime Minister Modi spoke about after the Uri attack, that blood and water cannot flow together, and that the Indian government might be tempted to revisit the terms of the treaty, as it were. Now, talking specifically about the decision of India to go for the Lahore talks on the Indus waters, would you see it as a precursor to a possible resumption of talks in some format, some way, sometime down the road?
I don't think these talks are going to happen in isolation.
Okay.
I'm sure the Indus Waters thing is the main thing over there. But I'm sure they'll look at other peripheral issues too. The point is whether the present government sees any purpose in continuing a broader dialogue. at a time when their basic concerns are not being addressed by Pakistan, then we also have to look at the fact that how does the internal situation in Pakistan pan out, you know? Every time the tug of war between Rawalpindi and Islamabad intensifies, things hot up along the line of control and all. So, I mean, the new army chief in Pakistan may have started off on a good wicket, but frankly, there are too many things here in this little pot that keep boiling over.
Indeed, Ambassador Shashank, if I can pose the same question to you, and before that, the sources in the Indian Foreign Ministry tell WION that one, the Indus Commission is a bipartisan body entrusted with everyday implementation of the Indus Waters Treaty, and that it is mandated to meet at least once every year. And the regular meetings of the Commission deal with technical matters concerned with implementation of the treaty and do not amount to quote-unquote talks between two governments. Your take?
Well, what has happened, the commissioners of the Indus Water Treaty at one time were the senior most officers. But the way bureaucracy has moved in both countries, they remain as commissioners, but they are responsible now for technical level discussions on the Indus Water Treaty and the implementation of the treaty. So to the extent that India feels that all the issues should be resolved bilaterally between India and Pakistan, they would like to continue with this thing till a final decision is taken about what to do with the treaty itself. And that depends very much on what Pakistan does or what Pakistan plans to do with regard to its neighbors. As far as the other aspect is concerned, yes, we have in mind overall somehow implementing and going ahead with talks with Pakistan, but we have to be very careful that there's a new administration in USA. They want to take action against terrorism. For them, terrorism means that terrorism is also not only emanating from Middle East, but also from AFPAC region. Secondly, Pakistan has tried to move a little bit away from America to China. And they feel that this $54 billion project which they are going to implement would firmly put Chinese on their side. They will never be able to get out of their hold. It also means that Pakistan will not be able to get out of the Chinese embrace. So the point remains that what should India do in the meantime? If Pakistan feels that Chinese behind them, they can now punish their own people, violate their human rights in every way, and also try to take over POK completely and make it a part of the Pakistan government. I think there we have to be quite clear that irrespective of whatever happens, the bilateral issues between India and Pakistan have to be sorted out bilaterally. China has no role to play. China had always been saying that whatever decisions are agreed upon between India and Pakistan, China would abide by that. Lately, they have started changing their position. And that also shows that Pakistan is leading them in some wrong direction.
All right. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I want to give the last question to my guests in Pakistan, to Rafe Alam and also to my colleague Taha. Now, are India-Pakistan relations destined to be stuck in the past? Is there any hope at all of someone somewhere coming up with an out-of-the-box solution anytime soon? To you first, Rafe.
Well, my human rights are not being violated. I'd like to say that the Indus Treaty emerged from a Cold War security apparatus, which has been layered over by other types of Afghan war and 9/11 security architecture. There is now China making a big play in the region, and this will also add a layer of security architecture. And I'm afraid the Indian government will have to come to terms with the fact that regional and multilateral cooperation is the way of the future.
All right. On that, Taha, very quickly to you.
Well, we do see that the Pakistan foreign policy is run by and managed by, speaking from a Pakistani point of view, is managed by the Pakistan military. And we do know that the Pakistan military historically has been very Indian-centric in its strategy and its policy. And we haven't seen that changing, given the fact that we've seen these peace overtures by civilian governments, but the military has been firm about being Indian-centric and realizing this Indian threat with regards to now even with terrorism in the country, it's always blamed on India. So in that sense, I don't see much changing with when it comes to Pakistan with regards to the way it will look at India and the foreign policy.
All right. On that note, I want to thank Ambassador Shashank and Rafe Alam for their time. Time for a short break. Stay tuned to Gravitas.